introduce you to Sughra, which fits perfectly what we have been talking this morning. And when we hear about what happens, we want to know what is out there to help this woman, not just in healthcare, but also in charities. And we had two amazing examples of charities this morning, which will lead now to Sughra, who is a strategic cohesion lead for South Yorkshire Communities Together charity. For this part, we have done it a little bit different, so more of an interview-based discussion. So I am going to start with the first question. Sughra, if you could tell us a little bit more about your professional journey. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon. First of all, I just want to say that if my throat's dry and I cough a little bit, that's because we're 2/3 way through Ramadan, and so my throat is a little dry. And fantastic presentations today. I'm so glad I was invited as well, and I joined from the offset of today's program to mark International Women's Day, which is a fantastic collaborative feat, and well done to everybody who's organized it so far. I think for me, my professional, who am I and where do I come from? At the age of 10, I came to join my father, who was working in those days in Bradford in the cotton mills. So when I was born, actually, for around 10 years, apart from once, I didn't get a chance to see who my father was. And all I knew was that he was working in England, and saw him briefly at the age of 5, and then I saw him. And when I saw him, immediately he was image is very important to me, and how people dress. And so I saw my father in this European long coat. It was winter when we came. It was December 31st, 1969, and he was dressed immaculately like an English gentleman with a hat, and I fell in love with him immediately. And so moving from a very different culture to Britain then and to settle in Sheffield for a Muslim Punjabi family in a very industrial area, and I came from a very rural area of Punjab in Pakistan. It was actually very, very different. But for me, I think children are very resilient, and so you making that transition, starting school, learning English, etc., was not difficult. So in those days, I was lucky actually that I went to a school for people who know Sheffield in Attercliffe called Huntsman's Middle School, and so this school had a language centre, and so I went to the language centre to learn English, because in Pakistan I'd gone up to year 4, but we hadn't learned English at that time. So, and then back into school and back into work. Now, for me, I think I fell in love with education there and then, thinking, education, learning another language now, already having spoken Punjabi, then learn to read and write in Urdu, the national language, etc. So, and then as a teenager, I went to school, etc. and that. But in those days, very few Muslim girls actually went on to further education, on to college or university. So it was my mother, mainly my mother's decision that I should leave school and now prepare to be prepared to be a mother and for marriage. So her goal in life for me was, Sughra, you need to kind of like learn life skills. You need to learn how to run the household, etc. And so at the age of 14, actually, I became a full-time mother, because my mum had twins, and sadly we lost my brother. So at the age of 14, I became a full-time carer for my mother, because then she suffered mental health issues, etc. and that. And I feel that some of your life's experiences, I call them, they are transferable skills, because you learn all of those things, how to manage finances, how to manage your household, how to look after people, etc. And I learned all of those. But for me, actually living in family households of that nature, an extended family household, I had 6 other siblings. And so the boys generally wouldn't actually even move a cup or help me serve, etc. And that. So I felt this is a very subservient type of culture where I thought there must be something better to life than that. And one of the things about learning English was that I then was introduced to the library. You know, the library is a fantastic resource that I didn't have access to in Pakistan, certainly in the place where I was growing up. And here there was an array of books, and I began reading. So when you start reading like things like Jane Eyre and they were classicals and Wuthering Heights and the role of women, once again, I'm thinking, is this the role of women? Can women do anything better? Can women aspire for more, etc.? But then I think 2 people were really inspirational to me. And that was one teacher in Pakistan who took me under her fold and taught me so much and gave me the opportunity to be the class monitor. So I had a little bit of leadership kind of like position there. And then the other person was a doctor who looked after me when I was ill here in England when I was around about 13. And I thought, okay, I want to be a doctor or a teacher. But, you know, Brigitte, as life goes on, that wasn't meant to be, but I did go into teaching after I got married and had children. So, you know, a start, you know, up and down start, but it did happen, you know. So I think the other thing you said was about the thing I really wanted to allude to was this charity that we've set up. I've been working in cohesion for many years, and we had a very strong team of people on the Cohesion Advisory Group in Sheffield. And then we had a project that was funded, and so it was called Cohesion Sheffield. And there is a website, I think that might be, or it might have been closed down, but that funding was for 3 years. And we did some fantastic work to engage with organizations, to look at how cohesive were they, and to embed some of the equality, diversity, and inclusion frameworks into their organizations. So we kind of looked at organizations and helped people to be more cohesive, etc. So, but that was done just as a group of people coming together at meetings and then taking forward to the Sheffield Council, their strategic committees to look at how we can then work with and embed some of the cohesion strategy with communities, etc. So 2 years ago, we founded, Dr. Jenny Wine and myself, we founded South Yorkshire Communities Together, because we felt there is still a gap in working with communities, in enabling people's voices to be heard. Now, you know, there are so many consultations that happen on a regular basis, but are people's voices truly heard, and are they really listened to? There is a difference. You know, people might be listening to me now talking, but are they really hearing me, and am I being listened to, thinking, what's she talking about, you know, etc. So I think for the so South Yorkshire Communities Together is a charity that is offering cohesion solutions. So our mission was to reach out to communities through information gathering and convening dialogue with voluntary and charity sector organisations, as well as statutory services. We work with in partnership with many of the grassroots communities and organisations that have been set up to address challenges, which actually currently there are so many environmental, political and social cohesion issues which destabilize cohesion. So, for instance, safety in neighborhoods and other things that are disrupting our routines, our lives. So take for instance, people have been, majority of the colleagues here are from the NHS sector. When it was the pandemic, and the coronavirus broke out, no one actually envisaged that so many people and would be affected, and how it would lead to lots of other issues other than mental health and further isolation of some of the older, aged population. It really affected everybody from early years, to later years in life. So for us, that was a pivot in the sense of thinking, now, there's this big divide. There's food poverty, fuel poverty, that their communities are buckling under mental health issues. The doctors are not coping with booking people in for appointments. Many organizations got rid of their counseling services. I mean, when I've worked in the further education sector, many of our students couldn't have access to other than guidance on certain things. They were referred to other organizations offering counseling support. And yet it's really important that before any type of learning, before any type of kind of like self-fulfillment and gaining confidence and self-esteem, you really need to be in a space where you feel that you're loved, you feel belonging, etc. And so these were the key things that we are trying to now work on, some grassroots projects that lead to people feeling respected, feeling part of the community, and actually to belong.
Thank you very much, Sughra, first of all, for the start of your incredible story of how you were inspired by two women in your life. And I am sure throughout your career, you have inspired many, because you did work as a teacher at Sheffield College for many years. Is that correct?
Yes. I started off at Sheffield College as an ESOL teacher, English for speakers of other languages. And then I dipped into numeracy and literacy. I found that actually I fell into teaching because I've always worked with people with disabilities and learning difficulties. So my first job was coordinating a group for mothers to teach them how to use hearing aids, because they were offered hearing aids, but they weren't using them. So because my sister's got some moderate hearing impairment, I used to support my sister and the peripatetic teacher that used to come to her. And so she actually gave me the opportunity to set up this group. And so I did that. But then I fell into teaching. Once I'd started doing some part-time teaching, I thought, well, it's better if I now get some qualifications. So I went off to Sheffield Hallam University, and did my post-16 certificate in teaching. And as soon as I finished that, actually, I managed to get my curriculum team leader's job at Rotherham College. Spent 20 years, fantastic years at Rotherham College, working at different levels. So I was then ready for taking on more middle management roles, etc., as a head of department, etc., and came back to Sheffield College after having done my advanced professional diploma in management. So I'm a lifelong learner. I've been learning all my life, but I think that learning was actually, as well as experiential learning and experience, it was to gain qualifications to understand how to do things better. So for that advanced diploma at level 7 was a really valuable learning experience for me in order to get my head of department job back at Sheffield College. So not only have I taught English language, literacy, numeracy, basic skills we used to call them, as well as employability, but I've set up courses that are leading to people getting better communication by enabling them to have employability skills, etc. So with DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, we set up courses for all these people who were unemployed, so that they would come to, we set up a really tight model of you would come to college every day, every morning or every afternoon, and you would learn English in a short, intensive course. And then the job centre said, oh, wow, it's working for ESOL learners. Why don't you do it for our other people who are unemployed? And so then we started doing those courses for them as well. I think those courses are still running at Sheffield College. So really, actually, to be honest with you, it's been a fantastic honour and privilege to give the gift of learning. For me, I think the gift of learning is something that you can give so freely.
And I also wanted to add a little bit here that when I first went to Sheffield College in 1999, Sughra and many other English language teachers, including Fadila Taylor,
Yes.
They were the teachers I was inspired by, because when I looked around, they looked from different background, different communities, and I thought, if they have done it, I will be able to do it too. So you have definitely inspired me, Sughra. Thank you. And I still remember you from 27 years ago. My final question for today is, given the theme of today, Give It Again, can you tell us how can women in South Yorkshire benefit from your experience and your skills? How can we get in touch? How can organizations that are on this call today benefit from your wealth of experience? Thank you.
Well, I think one of the things that I've always kind of like touched base with and led on is working with the voluntary sector. And one of the speakers mentioned earlier about if you want to really get to know or understand about different organizations, career path, then look at being like either be a mentor or mentoring. And certainly, I think it's really important that you seize the opportunity of volunteering. Now, I volunteered all my life, actually, as well as working full time and being a mother to 3 children, a wife, and looking after my elderly parents, etc. A recent stint was I've looked after my mother who had dementia, and women's safety, etc., is so key and to our like lives, etc. But like dementia has been one of the worst killers of especially women, than anything. So I think our mental health, public health, etc. All of these, things are really important for me. Then, if volunteer. So I've been volunteering. I've led on organization called the TUSPE organization. It's in Rotherham. It's a women's organization. Once again, trying to empower women, because if you empower a woman or a girl, you empower the whole community. You empower the whole family, because it's part of our DNA that we actually not only look after ourselves and things, but we look after our wider family and wider community. And so for me, working with the community has been so important. And we can do it through volunteering, simply giving our time. And the other thing is about being supportive to other women. Now, women have said to me, when I got my director's position at the Sheffield College, director of curriculum, they say, how did you break through that glass ceiling? It's about, how did you do it, Sughra? And I said, there's no formula. Sheer hard work, being looking ahead, planning for the future, actually thinking, okay, I've done this, I might try the next step, etc. And so looking at challenges and addressing those challenges through training. So be ahead of the game, learning, keep learning. I think I've mentioned that I'm a lifelong learner and I'm still learning, etc. But the other thing that I've set up, and I don't know if I can just show you the poster at the back, is I've tried to put the banner up that is part of the creation work party in Rotherham has been to set up a global women's voices network, because it was badly needed. Rotherham, specifically, we've launched the charity in Rotherham. We worked in Sheffield mostly beforehand with the Cohesion Advisory Group. But here, Rotherham had a need because we've had so many issues around child sexual exploitation. Then we had the riots, man wars, etc. So people, clearly community tensions around asylum seekers, refugees, etc. And the resources. And so you find that communities who are actually loggerheads, they are, the tensions are rising, more polarization, because sadly, people are situated where those communities are already deprived. So, and then here you're trying to like work and integrate into that community, and it's really hard work. So we set up 2 initiatives as part of the Cohesion Fund in Rotherham. One was around organic networking walks, and Tanvia, my colleague, is here, I think, and she's been working with the project with that. And we simply said, how can you get people to engage and come together and collaborate and simply get to know each other? And so we did a series of curated walks in Rotherham and the different areas, because women were saying to me in the previous consultation I did, we don't feel safe now. So since the riots, there were more racist, more hate crimes, more antisocial behaviour. And a lot of these crimes actually don't get reported. They are unreported. It's same as the coercive control. It doesn't get reported. And so women continue to suffer, until something drastic happens, like their life is at risk or women are murdered, etc., etc. and that. So for that reason, we thought, give people the space to come together naturally. And I love the outdoors. I love being outdoors, so walking, climbing, green spaces, etc. And so that was a project that actually touched over 100 people, and the organic networking walks. And we brought in 2 other walks, and we did collaborative walks with 2 other groups who had no diversity in their walks. You know that there are ramblers, there are other walking groups everywhere. But if you look at the diversity, hardly any. And why? We asked the question, why aren't those groups reaching out to people, the wider communities, the diverse communities? So I've flipped that. A lot of my people have been women on the walks, men have joined as well. And now we've kind of like collaborated with the group. So it's growing, and hopefully we'll continue some of those walks now that the better weather is coming. And other was the initiative was to set up the Global Women's Network. Now, you guys, you've got a fantastic network, and it's already established, and it looks like, and so we've done our second conference just a few weeks ago, and that was looking at really 3 key things, and that was, one was safety, because if women don't feel safe, they start excluding themselves, especially younger women. So, not going out when it's like dark nights. Well, 6 months of the year we have darkness here. So, that's not good for economy, for our families and our own personal, like self-esteem. And then the intergenerational aspects of it, different generations coming together. So, many of our women on the network, we've got magistrates, we've got people in education, people in NHS, and super, people in leadership, etc. We need to like utilize their skills. And so, I put out the call as well that we wanted mentors, and already got a few mentors now. So we're hoping to actually get the younger people, or people that want to go and experience a different type of career path, to come together, and we collaborate and we share our experiences. I think that everybody's got room for growth and learning.
Thank you very much for this. And if you don't mind to share your email address with people on the call who can contact you, because I'm sure there will be an interest, especially people from Rotherham. So thank you again. Much appreciated for your time. And I will hand over to Tori now. Thank you.